Okay, so welcome everyone. So tonight's workshop is called Technical Entrepreneurship, and the goal of this workshop, I tried to basically gather all the steps that an entrepreneur has to go through from the moment he's got some vague idea about a product to launch, basically, to the moment where he scales his business with lots of customers, recommending the service to any of their friends. So what are the different steps that you have to go through? And for each of those steps, what are the important questions to ask yourself? What are the tools that you can use actually to save time and not necessarily to code everything, but to start to prototype a bit your product? And what are the key metrics that you should look at without losing time on unnecessary metrics, but just the important ones? So that's a big program for tonight. We have like 1 hour and maybe 1 hour and a half to cover it all. I will mention lots and lots of different web services. So I beg you to stop me whenever there is something that's not clear and you want me to rephrase it and to go a bit into more details about one or different web services that I will mention. Okay? That's okay for you? Great, because that's the program. So I will go through 3 different steps in the life of your project as an entrepreneur. And the first one, which is really important, so that's not really the geek one. That's the phase where you have to define precisely the product that you want to launch. And sometimes entrepreneurs are a bit neglecting this phase, but for me that's really important to take a step back and try to define precisely your product. And there is really an important exercise that's called the product pitch, and that helps you to define the product you want to build, basically. So we'll take some examples and try to see what's a good product pitch at the end. Then I will show you how you can start by trying to find your market. That means trying to find customers that hopefully are willing to pay for your service if it's a paid service. And what the different steps that you can go through from the moment you want to work on the acquisition. That means making people know about your service and bringing them on your Facebook group, on your Meetup group, on your landing page. And then when you have these guys coming to your group or your website, you have to activate them. So you have to make them leave their mail or maybe pay with a payment form. Or we'll speak about activation and what it can be, because activation it's not only a newsletter. That can be lots of different things actually. And so we'll go all through these steps of acquisition, activation, revenue, how you make people pay, retention, how you make people come back to your website and reuse it, and ultimately referral, how you make people to recommend your service to other people. So that's all the steps that are part of a framework called AARRR, acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, referral. And so that's all the key steps in the life of your product that you have to work on. And that's really a good filter to have in mind as an entrepreneur to put the steps in the right order, basically. And at each one of these steps, we'll see what we can measure. What are the metrics that we can check, actually. So once you found your market, the last phase that you have to put in place is basically build your product. So you don't necessarily have to hire a CTO and build the definitive version of it. We'll see that you can prototype with web services and try to prototype a first MVP, delivering the value you promised to your clients, and then bootstrap on this MVP. But ultimately, if you find the good traction, you have at some point to scale it and to hire someone, but not necessarily at the beginning. So we'll discuss a bit about prototyping during the third part of the workshop. OK, so let's start with the non-geek part of the talk, which is the product pitch. So have you ever heard of this exercise? Like, what's a product pitch? I'll try to be quick on that for those of you who already know that. So that's not a pitch about the market size you have, or it's not a pitch that is mentioned that is targeted to an investor. It's a pitch really who speaks about the product itself, right? And so a good product pitch has basically 3 things well defined. First is the target, so the customer segment. And the more specific it is, the better it is. So if I say, I don't know, rich busy people who have dogs, well, that's a really specific segment. I can really find some location where I can find Facebook group with people who share about dogs or whatever. So that's a specific segment. If I say entrepreneurs or like general segments, that's not really precise enough. So the more specific your customer segment is, the better it is to really define the product you want to build. So that's the first part of a product pitch, is the targets. And the more precise it is, the better it is. Then the second thing of a product pitch is the pain. So these targets, what do they suffer from? And instead of need, I prefer the word pain, because it really has to be something painful for them, that they suffer from, actually. And for someone who owns a dog, well, I guess that if he's busy and working, well, maybe one of his pain is to find someone to take care of the dog during the holidays, for instance. Maybe that's something that's really painful. And maybe he has stories about him canceling holidays with his girlfriend because he couldn't find his family or friends to take care of the dog. So, and the last part of the product pitch is the solution. So sometimes entrepreneurs call it the value proposition. That's basically the product you want to ship to solve this pain. Okay? So I'll go quickly on 2 examples. One is from former students that we had in Amsterdam. That were 3 girls who built actually a website called Green Sums. I didn't have time to change the slide, so I'm sorry if you've been to a previous workshop. And so that's their homepage of their websites. So my question to you is like, what's their product pitch? What's their targets? What's the pain of this target? And what's the value proposition of their service? This is the homepage that they built. So they built this website at the end of the program. So what's the target? So as on any marketplace, there are always 2 sides of the target, right? On Airbnb, there are flat owners and flat renters. So in a marketplace, it's a common case where you have the target is like two sides. So here, what's the product about, actually?
Anyone who wants organic, fresh vegetable and fruits.
Yeah, someone who wants to grow fresh vegetables. And so if you want to describe a bit the kind of person we are speaking about, which kind of person? Do you have friends that would be interested?
Hipsters.
Yeah, hipsters, but hipsters is a bit large. I think that's a word that doesn't mean anything. Maybe people who are vegetarian, that's a good customer segment, right? And have a Facebook group with vegetarian people. That's maybe a really focused segment. Or people who go to organic food markets. So maybe when you launch this product, you can go on food markets, organic food markets, and try to distribute flyers. Maybe that's a good acquisition strategy for you, right? You can target veggie Facebook groups. So that having a precise segment is a way to find ideas about where to find these people. And the more specific it is, the more ideas you have. Okay, so that's one side of the target is like people who loves organic food and wants to grow veggie, are interested into nature. And the other side, garden owners. So someone who has a garden who doesn't have time to take care of the garden and who basically will be interested to make a bit of money and make people grow veggies into his own garden, okay? And so their pain, so for the garden owners, it's like he doesn't have time to take care of the garden and he doesn't make money out of it. And for the nature lover, well, the public urban gardens are really not that good. I don't know, in Paris that there are so few of them and they are not good at all. And also, I don't know, you don't have space in London. You have a small balcony, but except from a bit of basil and mint, but you can't grow carrots or whatever. So you miss a space, basically. So that's their pain. And what's the solution of this? What's this product about?
So platform connects these 2.
Yeah, that's a marketplace connecting garden owners, private garden owners, and people who want to grow veggies, basically. Okay? So that's a product pitch. Now I will show you a second one, and I'll go quickly on, because that's the example I will take during all the talk, because that's a product that we launched in Paris, that's really popular in France, and I think that's better to speak about something I did, because I will have some more insights to give you. So that's an online coding courses. It's in French, so it's normal if you don't understand the homepage. And so basically it's called ondemand.lewagon.org, and it's coding courses in French. I don't know if you know Codecademy or Team Treehouse, all the platforms to learn coding. So it's a bit the same, but in French, and with a bit differences that make really the product different at the end. So let me give you the product pitch quickly, so that because I will take this example again and again. So that's called Le Wagon On-Demand, and basically we target French entrepreneurs because we had already a community of French entrepreneurs that are willing to get the coding skills to prototype their own projects, basically. And the pain that we heard from these guys, if they didn't have 2 months to go with us for the full-time course, is that they didn't find any online tutorial to really teach them to build a product. And when they did the existing online tutorials, it was always really specific about one technology, learn HTML or CSS or make a bit of SQL and database, but that didn't give them the big picture, and at some point they gave up because they didn't see the interest. And so what we decided to build online courses, a bit as the existing tutorials, but focused on teaching the guy to build a product. And afterwards, if he wants to use the existing ones to dig deeper into one of the technologies, at least it has the big picture with us. That was the product we wanted to bring. Online courses focused on teaching code with a product-driven strategy. OK, that's it for the product pitch. Now we're going to be more and more technical, basically. So let's say I want to launch on-demand. We are back in the days 2 years ago, and I found my product pitch. I target French entrepreneurs. I know lots of Facebook groups with French entrepreneurs where many people might be interested with my product. I'm really clear about my product proposition value and product and what I bring and how I'm different from existing tutorials. And now I have to find to bring people to my website and to make them pay ultimately. Okay? And so that means I have to find my product market fit. And so here, that's what I say in the introduction. For me, the best framework giving you all the steps in the right order is called R. So it's just acronyms for acquisition, make people come to your website, to your Meetup group. Activation, it's like make them do what you want them to do, not necessarily leave a mail. That can be lots of things. Then make them pay. But it depends on your product. Some products, they don't have a revenue step. Let's take Facebook as an example. You agree with me that you don't pay to sign up on Facebook. So Facebook is a product without revenue. I mean, another product of Facebook, such as Facebook Ad, they have revenue, but the core product doesn't have a revenue step. So there is no metric for Facebook for that, because there is no revenue. But if your product is paid, you have a revenue step. And then the two ultimate steps is like retention. People use and reuse your product, such as you use Uber once and then you reuse it all the time. And ultimately, they refer it to other people. They recommend your product. So I don't know if you know Slack. It's a chat platform that most startups are using. Slack is the best example of direct referral ever. The first week I used Slack, I referred Slack to 10 of my startup friends, and they were using it and referring to, it was organic and exponential, actually. So that's the point where you want to, that you want to reach. And so we'll go through all these steps and speaking about metrics and tools that we can use. So let's start with the acquisition. So acquisition is to answer a simple question like, how do people know about me? Because for the moment, no one knows about ondemand.lewagon.org. And so how do people know I exist? So for this first step, well, that's your job as an entrepreneur to find a good strategy. And I will give you some things that we put in place for on-demand, but the truth is that's the phase where you have to be smart. So what we did with On-Demand, so that was an online program with coding courses, we made discounts and coupons, and we made partnerships with meaningful partners. So you don't know the French ecosystem, but Girls in Tech, that's not only French. That's a big association bringing girls into tech, in the tech industry. The Family is one of the biggest accelerator in Paris. That's a startup accelerator. And ESCP is a big, big business school. So we target associations, speaking about tech. We target tech accelerators. We target business schools. And we offer them partnerships because that made sense for their community. And that brought something new to their community. But I just speaking about discounts. There are no, that's not a smart thing to do. Then we had lots of emails because we launched Le Wagon 3 years ago. So we had already a base of like an email list, and we basically send a newsletter to announce our new project. That's also to bring some acquisition on the new on-demand platform. Straightforward. And the other things we did on on-demand, we put some budget for Facebook ad. Okay, so on Facebook, you can connect in the business side of the application, and you can post some advertisement and pay for it. And what's good, so it's a tip that we used. Once you have a first list of emails, that was the case for us because we had the newsletter with already 1,500 guys. You can upload your emails on Facebook, and it will bootstrap the audience to lookalike people. That means that people that, regarding to their algorithm, share the same interest or have the same hobbies or did the same schools, you know. I don't know exactly their criteria, but you can try to augment your first audience with their business developer tool. And the truth is, whatever works for you. It depends on your product. For instance, here we are in Escape the City, and I discussed it with Edward a bit sooner, and he told me that Escape did a big event to launch the Escape the City first, with 500 people coming. So making a huge event, it can be the best way, depending on your business, to make 500 people know about you, and spreading the word, basically. So that can be a huge event that can be paying influencers. If you are in the fashion industry, maybe you can target Instagram influencers or this kind of guys. That can be making some PRs, or it depends on the product and on your customer segment at the end. There is no generic rule about that, about acquisition. So I don't spend too much time on it because that's used as a smart entrepreneur who has to find the key and the good acquisition channels. Now, let's say you have done your job as an entrepreneur, and everyone knows about on-demand and is going on the website. So you have 1,000 guys coming and visiting your on-demand product. Then comes the second step, which is the activation step. So the activation, and sometimes when I speak with entrepreneurs, they say, yeah, activation is like a newsletter with MailChimp. And I feel that they are a bit, narrow-minded about what is activation. Activation, it can be lots of different things. And my definition of it is like, what do you want people to do when they arrive on either your Meetup group page, Facebook group page, your landing page, or whatever? So let's take an example, which is you. You came to a workshop that we did on a Meetup group, right? So for us, we brought you on Meetup. I don't know how, with Escape the City or with our own networks. So when you arrived on the Meetup group, that was acquisition, right? You saw the link somewhere and you click, you arrive on it. What's the activation for this Meetup? Let's say that this Meetup, this series of Meetup events that we do is a kind of product, sub-product of Le Wagon. Our activation is like you join the group when you arrive and you attend to an event. So you've been activated tonight. And so I will speak about the further step for us, but for us, the activation on Meetup is just people interested and willing to come to the events. You have to find your own activation criteria. So I gave you some examples. So depending on your criterion, you will look at different metrics, right? So let's say your criterion is like the number of likes on a Facebook post. I know a startup really popular in France. It's called Menu Next Door. It's neighbors that are cooking for their neighbors and making menu and making people pay and coming to their place and take some menu away. And they started in Brussels with without product, but just with a Facebook group, really active. And on every post, some girl who said, yeah, I've just cooked a teppanyaki or whatever. There was like lots of likes on the post, people that reacted with, I want some, and they started like that. Now they have a platform selling menu and they developed the product, but they started like that. So their activation was the number of comments once for every post they make on the wall of the group, or the number of likes they have on the group. For us, well, one of our acquisition metrics is activation metric, is the number of people subscribing to Meetup. So on the London Meetup group of Le Wagon, we have 500 people. So that's all the metrics that we look at, for instance. I'm not sure we'll be successful in London or not, but the metrics we are at the activation phase right now. So I don't look at what's further. I just focus on it for the moment. I respect the R framework. It can be an email on a landing page with an email newsletter, and ultimately it can be a pre-order. So let's take the case of on-demand, the online courses that we had. Basically, we haven't really coded on-demand, no tutorial, zero content. But we started to sell it on the landing page of On-Demand at the beginning. So there was a Stripe form where people can actually pre-order the course and pay for it. So so there were no newsletter, just prepayments. So in our case, the activation was merged with the revenue. It was the activation criteria is like the people actually they order and they pay for it. That's really a powerful activation metric when people pay for your service or pre-order. And one of the messages that for me is really important is like, sometimes I heard friends that launch a new product and they are really proud about it, which is really natural. It's a world with lots of optimism. but then they say, yeah, I've got 800 guys on my Facebook group, and it keeps growing. And I tell my friend, well, it's normal it keeps growing, because otherwise that will be a bit annoying that people unsubscribe. That means that you did something wrong. Like a metric is, overall, it's still growing. The number of attendees on our meetup will be growing, the number of guys we have on the Wagon London meetup. And so what's interesting is not it's growing. It's like, what's the behavior? What's the number of new comers every week? And this can flatten. Even if the overall metric is growing, the new members or the new number of likes every week, this can flatten because you benefit from a boom in communication at the beginning, but then it tends to flatten actually. And so be careful about what we call vanity metrics. It's overall numbers that don't reflect your business at all and the trend. Be humble and look at relative metrics. Okay? So if we take back the example of on-demand or online courses, for us, the activation step of the AARRR framework was merged with the revenue phase. And for us, one activation was one revenue, people who pre-order for the course. And so we had this try payment where people can actually pre-order the course. Okay? And that means that our activation metrics, it was the number of purchase. So here I just gave you a dashboard that we have from Mixpanel. It's one of the different analytics solutions. And so the metrics we looked at for on-demand was the number of purchase. That was really what matters to us. Okay, so before we go to the metrics and how you can be precise about the quality of your audience and try maybe to differentiate between your marketing campaigns, let's take a step back and ask a simple question: is when you want basically to activate people, the first thing you have to do is to know where you want to bring them. And so I spoke about it a bit sooner. So you have to have a reference point where you have to bring people before you activate them. And so this reference point, it's not necessarily the definitive product that you want to build. It can be a Facebook group, such as in the case of Menu Next Door, the guys from Brussels selling food through the neighbors. It can be a meetup group, so such as what we do here in London. It can be a Kickstarter campaign, if you are launching a product and making people pre-order your product before you have actually built it. Or one of the canonical way of testing an idea is by building a landing page. So it can be also a landing page. So I go through also tools because I think the talk is also about giving you tools that you can use at each step of this process, entrepreneur process. So to build a landing page, there is lots of tools that you can use, such as Launchrock, Strikingly, Squarespace, Unbounce. Some of them enable you to test with some A/B testing. So Unbounce, I think you can test different variants of your landing. And I'm sure there are dozens of new ones because the slide is a bit old actually. So either you go to using an existing tool that makes you create a landing page, or you learn the technologies that are necessary basically to make it on your own. And so these technologies, because we are also here to speak a bit about code, you have to master HTML, CSS, and a bit of JavaScript, but that's not really a prerequisite to build a landing page. HTML and CSS, it's sufficient. And if you want to save time when designing your landing page, you have to use a CSS library, such as Bootstrap, which is the library from Twitter, or Material Design on the right, which is the library from Google, respecting the design guidelines of Google, basically. And so the good news is when you learn frontend, not only you can, it's not a long thing to learn, basically. We have a workshop which teaches you how to make a landing page in 2 hours with HTML, CSS. So if you just look at it, you have the basics necessary to build a landing page, basically. So it's not a huge amount of work for an entrepreneur who spends his life into working on lots and lots of things. So it's really not 2 hours of waste, actually. And the good news also is like once you master frontend, you can play on your own design, and you can start to actually embed a lot of different web services. Because all of these cool web services that are here to help you add intelligence to your website and help you start to prototype your product, they all work the same way. They give you, I will make you a demo, they give you some kind of embed code that you just have to put in your HTML. and that will inject in your page a newsletter form, a more complex web form, a survey, lots of things. So if you just know front-end, you're not doomed to make just design. With all these web services, just by copy-pasting code within the source code of your HTML file, you can add lots of activation forms within your websites, within your landing. So this first one, I don't know if you know about it. What is it actually? Who knows MailChimp? Who doesn't know MailChimp? That's not a shame if you don't know MailChimp. Okay, everyone knows MailChimp, so so it's just a newsletter form. That means that they give you some code, you put it in the HTML, and boom, you've got a web form with just one input, which is an input for an email. So the most simple form you can think of, actually. Then if you want to build a more advanced form, with not just one email field, but a drop-down list, so you can choose among different choices. There are two web services that are convenient. Maybe there are other ones. So it's for web forms that are a bit more complicated than just an email input. And there are Formkeep and Wufoo. So Formkeep, I think they don't have a free plan. Wufoo, they have a free plan. But I think Formkeep, the design is a bit better. So if you don't really care about the design, you can go and you just want to test something in an aggressive way, you can just take the free plan on Wufoo. And I will just use Wufoo to make a demo. Yeah, I will make a demo actually on Wufoo. Then if you want to survey, so I'm not sure it's a good tactic, but you can embed Typeform. So you know Typeform, it's like a form but with different views. So all of them, they're all what as a developer we all call them form. But if they have just one input, it's an email form. If they have several inputs, it's like more advanced form. And if they have animation and different pages, that becomes a survey actually. But a survey at the end is just a web form with different inputs and a bit of animation. Okay. For support, there is an awesome tool which is Intercom. You know who knows about Intercom? So here on demand, there is a chat box here, and you can start to discuss with all the team members that are connected on Intercom right now. So as you can see, my two partners who are proactive on, even the founders are on Intercom. Sebastian and Romain, which is sitting over there, they are in Intercom. So if one of you starts engaging the discussion, what's on demand? What are the courses about? Why is it so expensive? You know, all the questions that we have every day, you can start to explain and ultimately sell the product, and you understand your users. And at the end, I will speak about retention and how you can engage your customers. And you'll see that Intercom is also an amazing CRM. It's not just a chat. It's really not just a chat. It's, you can automate emails and do lots of stuff. So we'll speak about that when we speak about retention, actually. OK, so support, you have Intercom. Support plus CRM, actually. Payment, you've got Stripe. So Stripe is a payment service with an API. And so if you want to embed a payment form and make people pay, and it goes to your bank account, you can do it without any coding skill, just the front-end skills, actually. You all know Stripe? No. So that's a payment system. So you have a simple landing page selling one thing. It's 50 euros. Let's say one coding initiation course, 50 euros. You go to Stripe, you create an account, you create a payment, you enter your bank account details. It gives you some code, you enter the price of your product, it gives you some code, you put it on the website, and you have got a payment form, okay? You can start selling your thing. And these one are not activation tools, they are analytics tools, but they rely on the same principle. They give you some code, you put this code on the HTML, and it will track events, page views. So to track page views, there is Google Analytics. So here I will create a Wufoo form. So I will connect on Wufoo. And I will create a form. So login. OK, so it's a bit old style, like old school websites. So here I can create a new form. So I create a new form. So form setting, I will name it Le Wagon London. Okay? And I will put some description, and then I can add some fields just by drag and dropping any field. So if I want an application form to launch our bootcamp in London, well, I need to get the email address of the person. So where is it actually? If you find it, here it is. So I can just add the email. Maybe I can ask for his motivation. Why do he want to take a coding bootcamp of 2 months? That's a big commitment, so I want to know a bit more about his interest. So maybe I will add a paragraph of text. So I will ask, if I'm a good entrepreneur, I will ask his referrer. How does he know from us, actually? Is it from Meetup? Is it from some campaigns we did? I don't know. I can ask his motivation. Okay, and I'll add a new one, which is maybe a drop-down list. And I'll say, okay, why do you want to take the course? And maybe, okay, first choice, that will be build my MVP. Second choice will be find a developer position. And third choice will be learn tech skills in a more general way. Okay, so I'll add them, and where is I have to validate it? No. Okay, and then I can save my form, and there I've got an option which is share this form, web link, embed, Facebook, blah blah. So embed, that's the geek way of saying copy paste the code in your HTML code. So I'll check to the embed. So here is the raw URL, but here you've got the embed code. So I'm stupid. I just copy the code, and to visualize it, I don't have time to create a new HTML file. So I just use a tool which is called JSFeeder. It's just a tool to test your HTML. You put your HTML, and you have the graphical results. Okay? Because I don't have time to create a HTML file and put it online. So here I can just copy and paste my code in a HTML tool and run it to see the output here. Okay, so that's how the form will look like on your website. And so I can apply actually to Le Wagon. So who wants to apply? Yeah, I tried. Okay, so I will apply myself, even if I know the program by heart. But okay, so that's Boris. Edward, you want to apply?
No.
Fuck yeah, you want. Edward at Edward. Ed referrer. How do you know from Le Wagon actually?
Anna.
Boris, and you rock. And why do you want to make Le Wagon actually?
To build my MVP.
Yeah, okay, I know that because you paid £6,000 for it. Okay, now I submit the form, and okay, great, thank you for filling the form. And if I go back to my dashboard on the Wufoo. Okay, I'm sure you know what happens. Well, actually, well, I'm logged out, first of all. So if I just log in again, here I've got a new entry, and who is it actually? Oh, Ed, you want to do Le Wagon? Yeah. That's cool, because that was the last seat for July, so okay. So here, Edward, referral me, and motivation, you rock, okay? So it's like it's playing the role of the backend for you. So for sure, the design is shit or whatever, but it's just the simplest way for me to show you how it works. And all the services, they work the same way. Text and code, copy paste, and then you have a dashboard, and you can check, like you have some dashboards to analyze the results. Now, that's all service to integrate some kind of activation form into your landing page. But at some point, you want also to track your metrics, your acquisition metrics and your activation metrics, because that's the two steps we have spoken about. So let's start with your acquisition. So to assess your acquisition, well, the straightforward way is to go on Google Analytics and look at the dashboard, the main dashboard, let's say. And so just so you have some elements of vocabulary on the main dashboard. So this is the traffic on Le Wagon website of last year, I think. So what you have on the right, it's called a referrer. So I don't know if you know what's a referrer. It's where the guy was when he clicked and he arrived on your website. Was he making a Google search? Was he reading a TechCrunch article about Le Wagon and clicking on the link within the article? Was he clicking on a tweet, a link within a tweet? That's called a referrer. Okay? So that's a way to qualify your audiences. And a good column to look at is it's called the bounce rate. So what's the bounce rate actually? If you have a high bounce rate, is it good or is it bad? Is it bad? It's bad because the bounce rate is the percentage of users that arrive to your website and they bounce. They just go somewhere else because they are not interested at all. So the higher your bounce rate is, that means the less qualified your audience is. So here it's not that interesting, but if you look at the TechCrunch referral, because we got featured 2 times in TechCrunch, so that was the first article about us. And if we look at the bounce rate, well, it's 38%. That means that like 40% of the people, like 40% bounce actually, don't visit the website. That's pretty low. And if we compare it to, let's say, Twitter, so guys who click on Le Wagon, but from Twitter, we see it's like 60% bounce rate. That means that the audience from TechCrunch is much more qualified than the audience we have from Twitter, which is not a big news for us because we're in the tech industry, so that's normal that people that read TechCrunch want to know more about you because they are reading the article right now. And so there are also 2 columns that I like personally. So it's not for a landing page, you don't just have 1 page, but imagine we have several pages describing your product. The number of pages that are viewed per session, that's interesting metric because that means people are interested by what you offer, and the time they spend, the average time they spend on your website. These 2 metrics, I think that's really important because it assesses if they are interested by your product. They want to know more, basically. So that's to assess about your acquisition and to qualify your acquisition. And be careful, the bounce rate, it has to be low, the ratio of people bouncing, actually. So now that you know that, okay, I've got 3,000 visitors coming from different audiences. How do I track my activation metrics? So that's really straightforward. Let's say your activation, it's a MailChimp, newsletter form. What's your metric in this case? What?
Conversion from how many visitors you have and how many users, right?
Okay, so if your activation is a MailChimp form, your metrics of activation is the number of guys leaving their mail. So it's the number of new emails in your list every week. That's your activation metrics. And if you look at it regarding your acquisition, that gives you the ratio of people you get actually. Okay, so it's straightforward. It's like how my email list is evolving. That's my metrics in this case. That's my activation metric. Okay, so in the case of on-demand, I told you that revenue was the same as activation because for us, an activation was someone paying. So in our cases, the activation was also the revenue and it was basically the number of purchase. So the number of purchase, you can look at it either on the Stripe dashboard because if you embed the Stripe payment form, well, you've got access to the dashboard of sales. And you can also if you want to, if you plug the Mixpanel, you can also check that on Mixpanel. Because in Mixpanel, you can just push all the events you want, the clicks, like the customized events. And so you can customize an event which is a sale and push it on Mixpanel to have it on the dashboard. For the acquisition, you can go to GA, that's the mainstream. And for the activation, it depends on the service you use. And then you just have to go to the dashboard of the service. But then the thing is like, it's good to know as a marketer or the marketing employee you have in your team, which campaign is working. And on Google Analytics, you just have the referrer. That means the guy comes from Twitter. Well, you don't have enough information to say, okay, is he coming because we share it on our popular wall on Twitter and lots of our friends or followers did click on the link? Or actually, is it a post that my community manager has done with a nice graphical design that she has worked on? What the campaign it comes from, this click? With just the information of the referrer, it's not enough information to assess which campaign is involved, right? And so for that, we have to, as an entrepreneur, you have to add information within the URL, and that's called UTM. So who knows about UTM? Okay, good news. I like when you don't know because I don't feel useless. Okay, so let's say I want to, oh no, it's not .org, it's .com. Let's say I want, okay, I've just launched Le Wagon. My community manager, he or she wants to basically share the links for our launch. We worked on some good design and we want to make a post on Facebook, let's say. So we don't want to share this naked URL because if we share it like that on Facebook, on Google Analytics, well, it comes from Facebook, but from which post exactly, from which campaign? So here we can add information, and that's called UTM. And UTM is the normalized information that are understood by all the analytics solutions. So Mixpanel, Google, Stripe, all these guys, they all respect this standard. So I'll show you. Here I installed the plugin to add UTMs to my URLs. So I just, so the naked URL is this one. And let's say the source is Facebook. Let's say the campaign is, okay, it's the campaign for our first launch. Okay, so that's the first post we make on Facebook. And the medium is social, because it's on social networks. Okay, so here, if I copy the URL and I open it on the same tab, look at the page. Well, it's still the same. Okay, that's the purpose. You add information to the URL, but the link is still working. That makes sense. But in the URL, we can see the UTMs. So UTM source, it's called Facebook. UTM medium, it's social, and UTM campaign is first launch. And these UTM guys, they are understood by Mixpanel, Google Analytics, so that in the dashboard on GA or on Mixpanel, you can segmentize your campaigns and know what was efficient. And that makes sense if you pay for ads. Because you want to know, if you pay a journalist to write about you, you want to know what's the conversion about that. Okay, I show you an example. So On-Demand, the online course that we have, we promote it on the main Le Wagon website. So if you click on Program, just on the French version, because it's a French online course. Here you have the on-demand tracks that are in French only. And if I click on it, look, I am in the main page for the track begins with Code Your First Website. And here you can see UTM medium is like referral, because referral, that means that it comes from another website. In this case, it's our website. UTM source, it's lewagon.com, because the referrer here is Le Wagon, the website of Le Wagon. And UTM campaign, it's navbar, because that's the link that we put on the navbar. So we want to check if this link is actually efficient. And if I go to my Mixpanel, so I show you a bit the inner mechanics of Le Wagon. If I go into my, I think I just, okay, the link is this one. On my dashboard, as Mixpanel, such as Google Analytics, is able to analyze it, well, I'm able to analyze my traffic or my purchase or my sign up, any events that I have added to Mixpanel, and segment it depending on the UTM source. So here we can see that Navbar Wagon, actually, there are lots of people buying our online course. Like most of people buying our online course, 40% they come from the link in the French version of the website in the Navbar. So again, that's the way to know what's working, actually. So my big message is, if you want to know which campaign is efficient, add the UTM whenever you share a URL of your product. Okay, yeah.
So how is it different from Google Analytics, because that's where it's showing you the referrer, right?
Now let's imagine that we had an idea, we defined a product pitch, we worked well on the acquisition, making big events and partnerships, and we did the job. Then we worked well on the activation and people are interested. At this point, we need to start delivering the value we promised and building a product. So either you go to the hard way and try to make it on your own, learning to code, finding a technical co-founder, or you can try to start delivering the value by prototyping your product a bit using existing tools. So I will speak about that, trying to give you examples. So my first tips, it's not really a really clever tips, is just use the right service depending on the product you are trying to prototype. So I'll give you an example. In the case of On-Demand, that was online courses with, let's say, 20 videos, quizzes and Q&A and a forum for each course, where people can ask questions about the video. Okay? And so now we have coded the platform ourselves because we are developers, but at the beginning, even if we could have done that because we are developers, we say, okay, we just want to a proof of concept and see if like people are pleased with the content, and we think that what matters the content of the video and not necessarily the technology. So we took some platform called Discourse that helps you to generate a forum. A forum? Well, it's just if you want to create a forum and host it on your domain, well, that's the good tool for that. But it's a really not well-designed forum. It's like a bit of an old-school forum. And we created 2 channels. One was called Questions or Help, or I don't remember the name, and one Courses. And in the Courses channel, we posted articles, but that was actually an embed video from YouTube and a bit of information about the course, some links to further resources. And that was it. That was an online platform teaching code. And actually, we were really afraid that people will just, say, well, you are developers and that's your product. That's shitty forum with lots of buttons everywhere. And actually, people were really pleased with that. It's like, yeah, I like the video, I like the pedagogy. And so we were really, it was amazing to see that people didn't really care about the products. They just wanted to have the good video materials, engage people answering their question, and period. And so our MVP was, okay, open source, maybe we paid a bit to host it. So a forum solution, Discourse, we embed YouTube, and that made an online course, actually. That was the first prototype. And so actually, how you can try to prototype something, either you go on the way we did with On-Demand, using some big solutions such as Discourse, or you can also try to use different web services and connect them to each other to automate some tasks. Okay? And now that's, I think, the most technical part of the talk. I will speak a bit about APIs to make you understand how all these web services that I mentioned from the beginning, MailChimp, Stripe, Wufoo, how they work, what's underneath. And what's underneath is APIs. So I think that's really important that you have some understanding of what's an API and how it works. So let's go through the web basics together. So basically, a standard website, such as we all know, it works this way. You've got a client computer, such as mine, a laptop. You open your browser, so you have a browser installed. And then you will enter some URL in the navigation bar or click on some links. And while you do so, you are making some requests, some HTTP requests to a web server hosting the website. Okay? And a part of the request is called the URL. We all know the URL. But keep in mind that a request is a bit more information than just the URL. And in the request, we have information about the website where I am when I click on the link, for instance. You have the referrer. So in the request, there are all the information that are being used by the analytics solution, for instance. But to simplify, let's say it's close to a URL plus additional information. That makes a request, HTTP request. And then what's happening? The server, well, in case of a standard website, is returning to me, responding with an HTML file. That's the standard way of working of a website. So if I go on lewagon.com to show you a bit, so here, and I will open the Geek tool at the bottom to see the request coming and the response from the server. So here, if I go to the network and I hit refresh, well, that is all the requests, the HTTP requests that are made to visualize this web page. So the first request that is done is this request to get the HTML file. And then when the browser intercepts the HTML file, if you look at the source code, for those of you who have made a bit of HTML, in the source code of the HTML, you have lots of different links, right? Links to the design file, which is the CSS file that we can go. I think it's, well, where is it actually? It's this one. here we can see that there are other URLs, URLs of image files, URL of design files, CSS files. And so that's why, actually, to be able to print the definitive version of the page, how is it working? There is a first request to get the HTML file. And when the browser is parsing the code, the HTML code, whenever it meets a new URL for an image or a design file, it makes an additional request to get this new asset. And that's why, actually, when we open the network, and when I refresh here, you can see all the requests that are made to get all the image, all the design files, all the files necessary to build this page. So my point here is like a request is not necessarily, it's not for a web page, it's for a file. You make a request for a file, and even in the case of a standard website, there are lots of requests made to be able to print the definitive version of your web page. So that's a standard website. And because as human beings, we like to see HTML and CSS because it's well designed, so we can see the pictures. It's not just the URL of the picture. Imagine I give you a URL of the picture. You won't know if it's Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, if it's just a URL with a random name. So humans, they like to see readable content. That's why websites return HTML and CSS. Well, computers, they don't really care about if they see that. That's not really useful information for them. So what they prefer is to have some structured information with keywords to be able to use this information. So this is the API version of the website. This is an API that means a website that instead of returning an HTML file for human, is returning some structured data file, such as a JSON file. So this is called a JSON file. You have several types of common format for structured data. You have XML, JSON, CSV. I don't know if you heard of those guys. So basically, that's different standards of files to structure raw data with keywords and semicolon and with different norms. Okay, and so one of the most popular is the JSON format. So just to make it clear, a website returns HTML file. To simplify, an API is the same. It works the same way, but it returns JSON or structured data files, such as JSON files. It's okay for everyone? Okay. So just to show you, because I know you are becoming geeks, I will show you a website, which is GitHub. So that's a website where all developers are putting their projects and collaborating on projects, actually. And so here, that's my profile on GitHub. So as you can see, the base URL is github.com. That's the base URL of GitHub website for human beings. And we can see the pictures and the information. Now let's go to the API version of this page. So the base URL, it's no more github.com, it's api.github.com. And I think I have to go to this URL. OK, and that is the JSON file that is returned by the API. And as you can see, that's my profile. I'm sure you all recognize my profile. So here, I've got my username on GitHub. I've got my picture. So if I open it here, I can see my picture. But it's within a JSON files. And so here is the website of GitHub, and here is the API of GitHub. They work the same way, but they don't return the same kind of files because one is targeted to human and one is targeted to programs, actually. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's made for computers and programs. So I'll take a less geeky example because that was GitHub. It's a bit geeky. So I'll take another one, which is Facebook. You know Facebook? OK. It was just to keep you awake. OK, so and Facebook, they know you are not going to read all their documentation about the API, so they built a tool to play with the API without having to read all the documentation. So that's called the Graph Explorer tool, I think, this one. So I just have to get a token because you have to authorize this tool to use the APIs with my authorization, actually. And OK. And so here I can make a request. And here, so they don't put the base URL, but the base URL, I think it's graph.facebook.com. the base URL of the Facebook API. Such as GitHub, it was api.github.com. I think it's graph.facebook.com. And so they give you the part after the main URL, which is called the path. Just the part after the main URL. And if I say, OK, base URL / me question mark fields ID name, I get this JSON file in return. My Facebook ID and my Facebook name. If I want to add my friends and make a new request, well, here I've got, if I make a request and I add comma friends in the URL, well, I've got a JSON file in return which with all my friend details and user ID on Facebook. OK? So it's just another example of the same thing. It's like an API is returning structured data. That was just to show you a bit what's underneath. And I know you're not all willing to become developer, but just to understand all these web services are working at the end. And so they know you are not going to get the JSON file and read from it. So what they do, basically, all these Facebook, Mailchimp, Stripe, all these web services, they have an API where you can read data and send data also. But instead of making you code the code that will send data and with all these URLs, they give you some embed code. If you look at the embed code, there is the URL with the API of the service, and they just make you copy-paste it in your web page. And then when you submit the form, actually it's making a URL to the relevant API URL at the end. So they all rely on APIs, but just they know that you are not developers. So they give you the embed code with the good URLs inside, and that's are the URLs to the API. So if you're curious, the next time you copy-paste some embed code, I suggest you look at the URL within this code and try to detect the API URL to see that it's really that which is underneath, actually. But for the moment, just look at this button and try to copy-paste the code. OK. So I just give you a bit of explanation about APIs, because now we are going to speak about how you connect APIs. And for me, that's good that you know a bit what's an API, actually. And so you can use lots of services, Stripe, Mailchimp, Intercom, lots of them independently. But what becomes interesting is when you start to connect these APIs to automate some tasks. And by doing so, you can prototype, actually, products. And so there are services that have been created that enable you, without coding, to connect APIs. That's called APIs connectors. And one of the most famous services that does that is called Zapier. Z-A-P-I-E-R. So I will make a demo about that. But to make a demo, I will take a real-life example from Le Wagon website so that you understand a bit. When we launched Le Wagon, the main curriculum, we wanted to get a form for the application where some student he can post his email, his motivation, and get in touch with us. And so afterwards, we plan an interview. And then we spend 30 minutes in Skype or in real life to discuss about the expectation of the student. And so that was a bit of a complex process. So at the beginning, we handled it. We just tried to get the emails, and we send emails to plan an interview without automating anything. But from the moment that in Paris it started to get popular, and we got lots of applications, handling it with emails, that was no more possible for us, because we just spent our life to answering emails and with questions. And the time we spent to do that, it was time that we could not spend into actually making interviews and making meaningful things. And so we had to build a kind of product, which was a product to handle applications. Application process product, if you want. So I will show you what we did. So we say, OK, here we are going to use Wufoo. You remember Wufoo? We build a form for the application, and we just embed this form on the Wagon website. OK? But then we need to get this data about this information on another service, and we picked up the service called Trello. So Trello.com. So Trello is it's a product it's used for product management. It's just a simple product where you can create boards and lists and organize cards within these lists. And so what we decided is like, OK, we are going to handle the application for one batch and for one city with a Trello dashboard. So let's take the example of the batch in Paris starting in October. Where is it? This one. So it's next October in Paris, okay? And so that's how our application dashboard looks like. There is an inbox list here, a first contact list, interview, that means that we are going to interview this guy. Then if he is willing to take the course with us, he goes to Codecademy because he has some preparation work to do. So that was our dashboard to handle application. And we really needed it because we were losing too much time on handling applications through emails. With 50 applications a week, we were just exploding. So we decided to handle it this way. And what we did is like, okay, first we are not going to code it because that won't be a lean approach. We're going to just make this connect the Wufoo and Trello using Zapier, connecting these two API, Wufoo on the first hand and Trello on the second hand. So I show you how it works. You can make a zap. So the zap we made is like, okay, we are going to choose the first service, and when some event is triggered, it will make another event on the second service, actually. So let's choose a first service, which is Wufoo. Okay? And let's choose some trigger events. And for us, the trigger event, a new entry on Wufoo. Okay? So when someone is submitting the Wufoo form that we put on the website, we have to do another action. And this other action is, well, we are going actually to use the Trello API and to create a new card on the inbox list here on the Trello dashboard. Okay? And so let me show you how it works. So now we have coded it. But at the beginning, that was just a zap connecting existing web services. Okay, so let's apply to Le Wagon, because I like to apply to Le Wagon. So let's apply to, which was the board again? It was October 2016. Okay, that's the Trello board that I have open, actually. So let's pick this board and complete the form. So here, we put lots of validation on this form, because we want people to really describe why they want to take the course. I'm making small talks. Okay, the referrer is me, and here I have to really explain what's deeply motivating me to do this course. Okay, so here we apply to this program, to this batch, and here it is. So the card, so the Zap, what it's doing is like, whenever there is a new submission of the Wufoo form, take the data and send it to the Trello API on this precise list. And so what's cool for us, like we just have to, on our mobile, to open it and to check actually the motivation of the guy. So here he looks really, really motivated, right? He wrote something really interesting about his background and why he wants to learn all these coding skills. So if it's a troll, I just get rid of the card. If it's a really interesting candidate, such as this one, well, I can take the card and swipe it here to the first card column. And even in this case, we automated a bit other process. So what we say is like, okay, let's say now the first event will be on Trello. And whenever we move, actually we move a card on Trello, so that card moved. We move a card from the first column to the second column, well, we'll trigger a new event, which will be a mail using Gmail to send a mail to take an interview with the candidates. And in the mail, there was a link so that the candidate can take a slot on with a calendar API automatically on our calendars. And by doing so, what we did is like we progressively, it enabled us to focus on what really has a really high value for us, which is taking time to discuss with people in Skype or in a real life situation and spend time for this precise step of the interview of the application process. And don't lose time on other things.
But how long does it take you to set up the...
It's really easy, actually.
Yeah.
So I'll speak about scaling after, because we started by doing that, and you will see that at some point it also became really time consuming. But really, if you just have one Zap to create, you just have to configure it a bit, two sides. You can ask for a bit of a geek friend or a tech friend that will help you set it up. But it's for non-coders, basically. So we made two Zap. one for the application from the website to push the card on Trello, and one to send the mail if the candidate was interesting and we swipe the cards. Okay? So there are lots of blog posts about lots of smart Zap that you can make, connecting Wufoo to a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet, if you want to get the information. So you can basically code hundreds of smart Zaps if you want to, and if you find the right use cases. Okay, so that's my second tip, is try to automate things using tools like Zapier before you code it, actually. My third tip to prototype is like, it becomes annoying when you use dozens of different web services because you have to check all the dashboards, right? You have to go on Stripe and check the sales. You have to go on Trello and check the new candidates for us, to check, oh, is there some new candidate in London or in Brussels or in Amsterdam? So at some point, the place where you work as lots of entrepreneurs is on Slack, which is a chat for startups mostly. And on Slack, it's just a chat, so you can create channels and discuss with your team members about anything. And what is really great with Slack is that they have lots of integration. So they enable you to plug all this data within the chat channels. That makes that you have the information in one place only, and you can also react to this data and ping your team members whenever there is some event. So I really suggest, if you are working in a small team, that you use Slack from the beginning, no email, just use Slack, and that when you use lots of services, you try to integrate them on Slack so that you know what's going on with your company. When there is a tweet about you, you know it. And if it's a bad tweet, you can just ping your community manager and say, well, maybe go easy with the guy, or don't react, it's just a troll, or whatever. You know, you can react on the fly whenever the information appears on Slack. So I won't show you all the channels we have to discuss with the board or anything. So, okay, this one I think is okay. I'm lucky. So this is the Paris channel. So we plug the Twitter account from Le Wagon Paris. And so we plugged also other services. And that's where we can see what's going on in Paris in terms of events, on Meetup events, on tweets. And here, for instance, okay, let's say there is in Paris there is a design workshop on the Wednesday night this week. And let's say there is a typo here, or I don't know, on the tweet. I can say @Edouard, so that's the guy in charge of the events and the alumni community in Paris. So @Edouard, there is a typo. Okay, so I don't have to check Twitter. That's the place I already work in, actually. That's the chat where I discuss with all my team members about different stuff. So I get the information without having to scroll Twitter every 1 hour to see what's going on. That becomes really the heart of my company is here, actually. And I will show you one of the channels we have. It's called the student channel. And it's for actually new application. Okay? And so here we track all the Trello dashboard activity. So for instance, you can see the new, so there is new candidates in Paris, one for this summer and one for October, like becoming in October. There is one, okay, there are lots of candidates for Paris today, actually. There is some moves in the card that means that people that are progressing in the interview process, that are in the interview phase or in the Codecademy phase. So here, that enables us, we just have an integration of Trello on Slack, and we can know how the things are going in Sao Paulo, because we are launching in Sao Paulo in July, or in London. We have an indication of that without having to bother people about, well, the manager in Sao Paulo, how are the things going, blah, 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 or going to the Trello dashboard. It's just plugged at one single place, which is Slack. Okay, so that my third tips, and my 4 tips is, so there are lots of ways to engage your customers, but when you first start your startup, remember one thing, is like, why startups are disrupting big industry? Because they put the user at the center of their service from the beginning. And that's why big corporations, they don't care about the users anymore, because they have the monopoly about their market, so they don't care about the user. But startups, they do care a lot, and the more you put the user at the center of your products at the beginning, the more the referral will be organic, and people will say, well, I just leave something amazing with these guys. And so for that, there is a really nice tool, which is Intercom. which is not just a chat, and I'm going to show you one thing that we did on the on-demand online program for using Intercom. But there are lots of things you can do to engage your customer. So when you pay for a course, an online course on-demand or French online courses, you have 20 videos to fulfill with quizzes and exercises. And basically, so we have to translate it in French, so I will make the translation. And we wanted basically people to feel that it's not a standard online tutorial such as the mainstream one, Codecademy, where you don't have custom response. Or you have response for other guys making the course, but that's not the professional developers, basically. So we wanted to feel that people are unique when they do this course. And so, of course, we have a forum when they can ask questions and we answer on the forum. But we wanted also to automate an email when someone is reaching the third video of the course. There are 20 videos, but when he's reaching the third video, well, he will receive an automated email which will be sent by Intercom. You can program automated emails corresponding to precise events with Intercom. And this email would be just a simple one sent by the CTO of Le Wagon, so the main developer of Le Wagon, which is, how are the things going? I hope you like the track. How are the things going for you? Really like a casual mail. And so that's exactly this mail here. So the title of the mail, all is good. Hello, Eric. Just a little mail to take some news. How are the things going with this first track? And actually, what happens, like the guy, when he receives that, imagine like Codecademy sends you a casual mail. Tell me how you are living the course right now. That's a crazy experience. So he really thinks it's not a bot. He thinks that's a real human sending the mail. So actually, what he answers is like, hello, Sébastien. I've just finished the first track this morning. I was a fake beginner because I already had some basics of HTML and CSS, but a bit old school. And that really enabled me to discover new awesome tools such as Bootstrap, GitHub Pages, Sublime Text, and Emmet. So I love the way you learn to code, and I want to know further about this other track that you have on demand, which is Learn JavaScript. And also, PostScripton, do you know when the Rails, so the Ruby on Rails track will be available? So the guys, they really take time to answer and describe his experience. And then what happens is like, you don't put an automate email just to have an answer and period. Why we do that? Because then we want to re-engage the discussion. And so here what happens, everything is centralized on Intercom. So the mail is sent, but even if it's a mail, even if the guy is answering with a mail, it's still on Intercom. It's centralized on the same chat. And here Sébastien is saying, hello Eric, really glad to know that you like this first track. About the second track, we speak about some framework called Middleman. So it goes a bit in the details. If the guys have some question, you can share links. And that creates an experience for the user. Because you're not used, when you make an online course about code with video, to get customized emails when you send something. We are used with big corporations to have big support teams that don't really give a shit about your questions and that will just put you on some waiting music all day long. So that makes a huge difference for someone who has this habit of support, actually. So just to summarize a bit that, choose the right services depending on your MVP. So for us, that was a forum solution plus YouTube. For you, that can be anything, and feel creative. Don't feel limited because you don't know how to code. There are so many services you can use, actually. Second advice, like automate the time-consuming task with Zapier, an API connector. Third advice, like if you are in a small team, use Slack and integrate all the information on Slack to have the data at the right time and react on it. And the last tip is put the user at the center, at the heart of your experience from the beginning, and try to put some nice automation to engage your customers from the beginning. And that can be the one I showed you, but that can be, if you are creative, there are lots of things you can do to really build some good UX for your users. Okay. And so just I will speak like 2 minutes about how to scale, because at some point you can't have a scaling business with zaps everywhere and with patchworks. And you have to actually put your hands in the code and build something. So either you learn it on your own or you find a technical co-founder. But let's take the example of the Zap I showed you with Wufoo and Trello. So we start Paris, we have one batch running and too many emails. We put this Zap and it's perfect for the beginning. We automate the process, we just spend time with the guys in the interview. But now comes Brussels 1 year and a half ago. And Brussels is starting to run batches, right? And we have to create a new Trello dashboard for every new batch of Brussels. And we have to create a new Zap also to connect the apply form on the website to this new Trello dashboard. So that makes 2 cities. Each city is running different batches every 3 months. And that makes one Trello dashboard per city, per batch. And now we have 12 cities. 12 cities. And so instead of at the beginning, really beginning, we spend our life answering emails, we automated this part. But then we spent our life creating Zap and dashboards. And at this point, there is no macro API making Zap of Zap of Zap of Zap. So at some point, you have to really build a customized product. So at some point for Le Wagon and for other products that was the same, we had to build a customized application process tool to make the Zap automatically, to create all these connections automatically. So we kept the same structure with Trello, which was really good for us, but the painful part, which was creating the Zap, we automated that by coding it actually. If we take the example of On-Demand, at some point people wanted additional features when we developed new tracks, and when we wanted to have several courses with frontend and Rails, we could not handle this on the discourse forum that we had first. So again, at one point, we had to develop the current version of On-Demand, which is an online product that we have developed from scratch, basically. So my point is just either it depends on the traction you have, but at some point, you won't build a viable and scaling product with a bunch of Zaps. And you have to put your hands on the code or find technical co-founders. And for that, my advice, the more technical you are, the easier it will be for you to find the good match in terms of CTO and the good way to work also with this person, actually. So that's the 2 options you have at the end if you want to start really building something on your own. Thank you very much.